Terrific. All right, welcome everybody. My name is John Blakeney, and along with Jacques Alexis, we would like to welcome you to our last evidence-based project management roundtable for 2023. We start again in January. We'll just continue. We'll continue with the speeches, and actually, our presenter Steve. This is part one of 2 parts, so he'll be here in January as well. Before I begin, or I pass it off to Steve, I want to, again, thank you for coming, and also to promote the PMI Association, especially the Mass Bay Chapter. Please go to the Mass Bay PMI website to look at other events, other roundtables, and share your knowledge and learn new things. But we thank you for coming today. With that, I would like to formally introduce our speaker. His name is Steve Devaux, and he is the president of Analytic Project Management of Newton, Mass. His consulting and training customers have included the U.S. Air Force, Siemens, BAE Systems, iRobot, Wells Fargo, et cetera, et cetera. Over the years, he has taught graduate project management courses at Suffolk University, Brandeis University, and University of the West Indies / Barbados. And I believe some of his students are here as well. Includes undergraduate courses at Suffolk and Olin College of Engineering and executive education programs at Bentley University and UMass Lowell. I'd also like to say that he is an author of Managing Projects as Investments, also as Earned Value to Business Value and Total Project Control, a practitioner's guide to managing projects as investments. He contributed chapters in 2 books in 2013, and many of his innovative techniques and metrics are being used throughout the world, including the critical path drag, which was recently encoded in the latest version of ASTA Power Project software. Very, very impressive. Steve has a master's degree in project management from Northeastern University, go Huskies, and he is the author of numerous articles and PMI webinars, and is a frequent speaker at the chapter events throughout the U.S., and he is a veteran of the U.S. Army Intelligence in Vietnam. Thank you for your service, Steve. And with that, I'd like to pass it off to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. Hi, everyone. A pleasure to have you all here. And just to start off, thank you so much to Northeastern University, which gave me my degree, and to the Mass Bay PMI chapter, where I've often done dinner presentations and so on over the course of the years. So thank you to both. Since it's the Mass Bay PMI chapter, allow me to say that some of the things I'm going to be talking about over the course of the next hour are going to seem quite critical. They're critical of the way project management is done, and that, of course, since PMI is such a big part of the way project management is done, it may seem critical of PMI. Let me say, I appreciate all that PMI has done for project management, but I happen to think that there are things that are missing. I don't know who originally came up exactly with things like work breakdown structures and earned value. I have a better idea of how critical path method came along. But to me, there are things that are lacking in all of these. And when the first PMBOK guide came out in 1996, I would have had no idea even how to define a project. They at least gave us a definition of a project, even though I may slightly disagree with that. So please do not, anyone, I hope no one will feel offended at my criticism of certain aspects of PMI. Nothing that would please me more than to have PMI adopting some of these techniques, which I've tried to get them to adopt over the years and put into the PMBOK guide, so far without success. Hopefully, if you folks think that this presentation has a lot of good information that you wind up using, perhaps you can persuade these organizations or APM or AACE to adopt some of these methods. My goal is to get you to walk out of here today, quite frankly, feeling this was a a career-changing event for you, that suddenly you're going to feel that you have learned techniques and approaches to project management you didn't know about before, and that this is going to make your life easier. This is going to make your projects and programs better. That's my goal. Okay, so it's a very ambitious goal. If that does happen for you, please let me know. Please follow me on and communicate with me on LinkedIn and send word back to Northeastern or whatever, because that is my goal. Okay, I'm getting started now. And the title of this is the first part of a two-part presentation, as John said. ROI should be king, because all projects are investments. And that's going to be the main theme of this, is that projects are investments, and I'm going to show you ways to approach them as investments and what the data are that we need in order to do this. I'm now going to take off my University of West Indies hat, keep my University of West Indies polo shirt on, but now hopefully my bald head won't distract you, but I'm more comfortable with the hat off. So here we go. So this is a free project management roundtable, okay? And ultimately, let's see here. There we go. So session 1 today is success and failure are two impostors. And I'm going to explain why I think that the way that we categorize projects into success and failure is simply wrong. We don't do that with all other investments. Secondly, session 2, which will be coming up January 18th, is weight is a heavy load, which is an old Barbadian expression. And there we're going to be talking about scheduling, critical path, this new metric that I've introduced, critical path, drag, and drag cost, and explaining how to calculate them. So that's where we are headed for. Today we're on section 1. Okay, and the goals for me, in order to communicate, what I want to communicate for you in this section is how the scope of a project generates the value of the project. And value is important because no one ever does a project unless they expect to get more value out of it than the project is costing. What do we call that sort of thing? We call it an investment, right? We'll discuss a technique that I have introduced called a value breakdown structure. You can look it up on Wikipedia if you want, or VBS, which focuses the sponsors and the team on value and how it's going to be generated. One of the big complaints about on large programs in particular is how do we get all our sponsors and stakeholders to discuss and to make concessions and to compromise among the various things they want to get value out of. And ultimately, that needs to be the value breakdown structure helps these folks to do that by seeing, yes, I want this for myself, but guess what? What effect is that going to have on this other project within the program? 3, the value generation interaction between the project and the rest of the program, as I discussed a moment ago. Some projects and some work within a program will kindle and enable value from other things. So we want to see that and figure out how best to do that. 4, how the value breakdown structure highlights the way work enables and kindles the value of other things. 5, the multiplied value and the multiply value aspect of delay cost of enabler activities within a program. So we're going to talk about something called an enabler activity. An enabler activity has much more value than we would normally might think it does, because it's enabling the value of other work. It's kindling increasing the value of other work. And any delays on an enabling activity often greatly reduce the value of the overall program by reducing the value of other work. And ultimately, how the 3 sides of the triple constraint, whoever came up with it was a genius, okay? And it's a wonderful project management construct. And how it can be integrated into a metric that I'm going to put out there called the DIP, which is based on my first ever article in a project management journal back in 1992, 31 years ago. Now, project management has been getting a bad grade. Why? Because projects are completed late. Projects exceed planned cost. Projects do not provide the expected value due to either inadequate scope or quality, and the intended benefit is not generated. If you are aware of this, some may be aware of the Pulse of the Profession report that PMI put out for several years. And for several years, they reported that the success rate for projects that they looked at was between 62 and 65%. To me, as a school teacher and professor, that's a D grade. And we would like to see it improved. It really has never improved. Why is it so bad? And I've thought a lot about this, and I'm going to offer some reasons why I think this happens. Okay. First, it gets back to the PMBOK Guide's definition of a project, which really goes back to the first PMBOK Guide, the first edition published in 1996. A project is a temporary endeavor, I underline the word endeavor, to create a unique product, service, or result. Okay, that was basically the original definition of a project. I couldn't, in 1996, I'd been working in project management for about 8 years. If someone had asked me to come up with a good definition of a project, I couldn't have done any better than this. But since then, I've thought a lot about it, and I've realized that there are things missing from this, and things that are important, and things that I think are causing some of the problems with project management. That word endeavor is what in the Wikipedia and other people would refer to as a weasel word. It's a word or phrase aimed at creating an impression that something specific and meaningful has been said, but it's only communicating something vague, ambiguous, or irrelevant. Okay, what is an endeavor? Okay, in terms of project management, and what is the essence of a project? Why do we perform projects? Indeed, why does a sponsor or customer ever take money out of their pocket and give it to someone to do a project for them? Obviously, they're doing it because they expect something out of it. And yet, we're not dealing with what that is, and we're not measuring it very well. We must know what something is to make good decisions, right? So let's imagine that someone from the planet Mars comes to visit, and we're trying to explain to them the sport of ice hockey. And we say to them, ice hockey is a temporary endeavor where people on blades glide across frozen water and occasionally use bent sticks to hit a rubber disc into a net. Clearly, that's ice hockey. That's a definition of ice hockey, right? All except for that word endeavor, which stops us from understanding what ice hockey really is. If we don't define the essence of a thing, in the case of ice hockey, a game, a sport, a contest, we won't understand it. And if we don't understand it, our strategies, tactics, and judgments, which player is better, what strategy is better, will be flawed. We need to understand that ice hockey is a game, the purpose of which is to get the rubber disc into the net, into the opponent's net more often than they get the rubber disc into ours, because then we win the contest. The traditional metrics of project management, what we report on when we have to report every week or every month how our project is coming. First thing they usually want to know, is your project on schedule or running late? And secondly, is your project within budget? Or will you need more money, or how much? Note with the first one, it's always, is the project on schedule or running late? Almost never do they say, is your project running early? That's like a concept that's It too, I think, comes from Mars, right? We don't even think about that. Yet, in point of fact, as I will attempt to show, especially in the next part of this class in January, finishing early is hugely, hugely valuable for all kinds of reasons on projects. Okay, now there's a third thing they tend to ask about, but it's often sort of an afterthought. If you don't mind my prying, is your project meeting the tech specs, performance, or scope goals? Wow. Why is that an afterthought? The reason it's an afterthought is, unlike the first two, which whoever is judging, the sponsor or whomever is judging, has a way to measure and see, are you on schedule or are you running late, and by how much? Are you over budget? Are you on budget? This third one is very difficult to measure. And when people don't know how to measure something, it causes them not to be as interested in it. What you can measure, you can improve. If I can't even measure it, what good is it? We need a way of measuring performance. And unfortunately, in project management has not done a good job of measuring scope. Okay. So let's take some projects, 5 projects, and let's look at them. These projects are all finished. Let's judge them in those terms and see if we can figure out which was a better result, because they're all finished. So these are 5 cookie cutter projects, very similar, in other words, and they're all completed. They all have a planned duration of 10 months, a $10 million budget, and very similar or identical scope. Now, project A takes 13 months, 3 months extra over duration, but it finishes on budget and all the specs are complete. Project B finishes on time, but goes $3 million over budget and all the specs are complete. Which is a better result? These projects are finished, and yet we really don't know which is a better result unless we have additional information. How much was that 3 months extra on project A worth? What is the value of time? We need to know that, or we don't know which of these is a better result. Project C, we finish on budget and on schedule. But we only did 80% of the specs. We cut out 20%. Which specs did we cut out? If what we're building here are, let's say, McDonald's restaurants, all identical, same design, but on this third one, we, instead of having 30 tables, we only have 20 tables. We reduce quantity. Maybe this is better. But what if the 20% of specs we cut out was mandatory stuff? We left out the kitchen. What's a McDonald's restaurant worth if the kitchen is left out? It's worth 0, because the kitchen in a McDonald's restaurant, building a kitchen, is a mandatory activity. Mandatory activities are worth the full value of their project when we do our value breakdown structure, which we will get to in more detail. Project D, 1 month, $1 million. Why? Because we canceled it after that amount of time. I'm not sure anyone would call this project a success, but let's understand, canceling that project, if it was called for, was a project management success, may have been a project management success. If that was the right decision, even though the project was canceled, it was a good project management decision. And project E, 9 months, finished a month early. It took $4 million extra, but we also threw in 5% more specs. We put in 120 tables. Okay. Which of these is a better result? And there are all kinds of variations I could throw in here. Which is a better result? If these projects are finished and we don't know which is a better result, and in typical project management terms, we don't know which is a better result, then how do we decide when we're doing these projects where we want to head to? Because ultimately, these results aren't accomplished by accident. They are accomplished by decisions, and hopefully good project management decisions. If we don't know which was a better result, how do we ever make decisions during execution? Okay, project results are rarely binary, success or failure. Success and failure is almost never applied, notice, to other types of investments, and yet they are used to describe projects, and that, in my opinion, is rarely appropriate. Project results are not binary, they are relative, better or worse, just like investments. And that means we need metrics that measure project results as better or worse. Without such metrics, we have no score for our ice hockey game. No way of knowing if we scored 3 goals. We don't know if that was good or not. Did the opposing team score 2 goals or 4 goals? Right? Now, what is the metric for every other type of investment? ROI is what the term a lot of people use, and I'm willing to accept that and name it King. Why? Because that allows me to have, a little bilingual pun in this presentation. ROI being the French word for king. So ROI, personally, I prefer the terms net present value or expected monetary value or even expected profit. But that's the reason that projects are done, for the value we will get out of the scope versus the amount we have to invest to get them done. Why are projects, alone among all types of investment, an exception to stressing value and return on investment? We have to know which result is better. If we don't know which project will generate more value from the dollar spent, how can we know not only which was a better result, but if you think about it, which should be the project that we choose to do if there are several we can do? And if we don't know which would be a better result, how can we ever make a decision, leading our project to one result instead of another? Project management decisions should seek the most profitable result in terms of value. And who is the value to? The person who is putting up the money, and therefore that person or that organization, call them client, call them sponsor, call them program board, whatever term you want to use, needs to convey to the project team what is the value we expect to get out of this, and what are the things that are going to affect that value. One of the things that will affect that value is the scope and the various items of scope, and even the order in which those items of scope are done. In other words, the value breakdown structure. Is it not possible that a project that takes extra time has a better result? Is it not possible that a project that takes extra money has a better result? Is it not possible that a project that modifies scope has a better result? Answer to all of these is yes, and that needs to be incorporated into the metrics that we use to decide the project. If you think about it, that needs to be incorporated into project management software that the project team is using to help manage their project. Okay, so every project is funded and undertaken only because its ultimate value is expected to be greater than its cost, which is usually spent earlier. This was the PMBOK guide definition of a project. Here's mine. A project is an investment in work to create a unique product, service, or result. By the way, if I change that word project to program, the same is true. Projects and programs are very similar in that respect. Now, in any investment, value means value to the investors, funders, providers of resources, or ROI. Future value enabled is the infrastructure to, for instance, to encourage greater money. So where ultimately does all this value come from? We think of it perhaps in making something and selling it, but there are different ways to look at value. One is future value that is enabled. And that value, yes, I'm talking about ROI, and when we think of it, we think of it in terms of money, but saving lives. Projects are often done to save lives. Isn't that value? Kids being taught to read. Isn't that value? Crime reduced, poverty reduced. How do we measure value? I know this. We measure resources and the use of resources in dollars. If we want to be able to justify spending those dollars on something, it's very useful to be able to show the value, whether it's crime reduced, a product being sold, or more kids being taught to read. Project resources cost dollars. If we quantify whatever value we've got coming in terms of dollars, we can justify ultimately the lives saved. In terms of dollars, in terms of rupees, in terms of euros, whatever you like. Programs versus project management. Programs, a program is defined in the PMBOK guide as a group of related projects or subsidiary programs that are managed in a coordinated manner, not available for managing them individually. Maybe grouped. Grouped how? How do we group projects in a program? The answer is to maximize the return on investment, the value that comes out of the program. Every program is done for the purpose of the value to get out of it, and the program manager is responsible for getting that value, determining what projects will be done to get that value, to obtain the benefits. What are the benefits and how are they measured? How do they interact? What benefits do they generate? Because a project manager is not necessarily responsible for the value of the project. They're responsible for the expected value based on what this project will be worth if we finish at a certain point in time for a certain amount of cost and the full amount of scope that we were supposed to finish. That's the project manager's job. A quick example of what the difference is, and this is not well understood at all in project management circles. The difference between a program and a program manager and a project manager, I have found, is best defined by using the example of making a movie. The director of that movie is the project manager. The movie is their project. Their job is to make the best movie they can for the however much the budget is or less, and to have it come out. And they make a great movie, and then the movie totally fails at the box office because the marketing and the advertising and the distribution did their portions of the program badly. The program manager is responsible for all of those things. And if the program fails to get people in there and make money off of this wonderful movie that has been made, it's not the director, the project manager's fault. It's the program manager's fault, who is responsible for the full value. See the difference there? Okay, now, programs and projects both generate value and should be planned in a work breakdown structure. Both have a duration determined by a critical path, although the critical path in a program is a little different from what it is on a project. Sequencing in a project is usually driven by what I'll simply call Newtonian physics. We can't put on the roof till we build the walls. We can't build the walls till we build the foundation. On a program, a lot of work can often be done in parallel. The purpose in sequencing programs should be to sequence them in the way that will maximize the value and the ROI of the program. We don't want to run our ads for this wonderful movie we've made, which is a holiday movie. We don't want to run that in summertime. right? We want to arrange these activities to give the maximum benefit to the overall program. Okay, so I'm so glad you all came here today, folks. You didn't know that you were coming here today because I was going to try to persuade you all to buy shares in my luxury development Paradise Island. So it's a luxury resort island for your investment and, of course, for your exquisite pleasure, because we assume you will come and spend some time on our luxury island. Grand opening is planned for January 1st, 2027. Now, it's going to have magnificent golf courses, right? And that they're going to bring in, once it opens, they're going to bring in $2 million a week or $104 million a year. And it's going to have a marina for the yachts of the rich and famous. They're going to come and park their yachts there and stay on the island. And that marina is going to bring in $3 million a week. And then we're going to have luxury hotels and restaurants and stores and boutiques and so on. And that's going to bring in $5 million a week or $258 million a year. All construction of all three of these is scheduled to begin January 1st, 2025. So they're all going to occur in parallel. This is a program. Now, the beautiful thing is guest privacy will be guaranteed on this island. Why? Because there's no way to get to the island. It's got very rough shores, okay? There's no way to land a ship there. So we're building the Garden of Eden Bridge to get people, and first of all, to get the equipment there to do all of this construction, okay? And access to the island will only be through the Garden of Eden Bridge. It's currently under construction and is scheduled to be completed December 31st, 2024, so we can start the construction of the golf courses, etc., January 1st, 2025. And we're going to put up a little toll booth on this bridge once it opens. We figure this toll booth will bring in $40,000 a week. That's good money. That's $2 million a year, right? Okay, now, so we have our Garden of Eden Bridge scheduled to be finished December 31st, 2024, and it'll bring in $40,000 a week. The golf course construction, scheduled to begin January 1st, 2025, is going to bring in $2 million a week. That means if the golf course is not ready to open when we do our grand opening, it's going to cost us $2 million for every week it's late. And the marina construction, $3 million a week, that'll cost us $3 million a week if it's late. And the hotel and restaurant and shop construction, $5 million a week. That'll cost us $5 million a week if it's not ready at the grand opening. The grand opening is all of this stuff. So if it's not, the grand opening is not ready January 1st, 2027, it's going to cost us $10 million a week if we can't have the grand opening. That means the cost of delay on the grand opening is $10 million a week. But what is the weekly cost of delay on the Garden of Eden Bridge? What if that takes an extra week, an extra 2 weeks, an extra 3 weeks? Immediately, all the other activities in this program, all the other projects, will be delayed. And so the cost of delay on our little bridge here will be $10 million and $40,000 a week, because our toll booth isn't going to bring in its $40,000 a week. The cost of delay on the enabler project is multiplied by the value of all of the other projects it's going to be doing and the cost of delays on those. If you right now are in my audience and you are working on a project which is an enabler or kindling project in a program, you're probably not getting a whole lot of respect for it, because these projects within the program, the enablers, often don't seem to be bringing in a lot of value. But they are, because everything else relies on them. And if you figure out what the value of the cost of delay is on those, you not only will be able to justify the resources you need to not be late, you will be able to justify the resources you need to shorten that critical path and be earlier. Okay? I hope everyone sees that. Here's our value breakdown structure for a project, just to show you. Here we have, we're building a house. The house is going to be worth, we're going to sell it when it's done for $200,000. We have mandatory activities in black. The foundation, the exterior frame, the roof, the interior. The porch is optional and in red. The porch is optional. Optional activities have a value equal to what they're adding to the overall value. In this case, 10%. The value of the porch is $20,000. If we do everything else but leave out the porch, this project would only be worth $180,000. And as we get down through this project, notice we get to more and more optional activities. One bedroom is mandatory. And if we sell it as a one bedroom, it'll be worth $100 million. It'll be worth $200 million. Okay, or it would be if we do all the rest of the work. But the additional 2 bedrooms are worth $80,000, which tells us that mandatory, if we only do the mandatory, the 1 bedroom, the value of this project would be less by $80,000. It would be worth only $120,000. That is how you can use a value breakdown structure to get everyone who is thinking of investing in this project, all the key stakeholders, to see how things are working together and what the value is of their work versus the value of others. Okay, so in any project, there's mandatory work and there's optional work. One thing to let you know is that the optional work, frequently projects are done with optional work, which winds up costing more than the value it's adding, especially if it's on the critical path, because then it has something called drag cost, which we will get to in our next presentation. Why would anyone ever want to do work that costs more than its value? They don't, but they don't realize often what the true cost is of doing work on the critical path, because the work on the critical path has drag cost. And what is the true cost of work? What if a task delays the end of the project? Now, the value of an enabler project within a program can be huge. The value cost of acceleration and delay on an enabler project can be huge, and it's worth the effort to identify enabler activities or enabler projects within a program and estimate the value and cost, not just of delay, but of acceleration. Okay. Now, projects are a combination of 3 sides, right? Scope, time, and cost, and risk, which can affect them all. This is called the triple constraint triangle. It's been around for years. Good project managers manage these anyway. But if we recognize that projects are investments, then what we really need is integrated metrics across these variables, which would allow us to tell which one of those 5 projects earlier was done better. If we were working to one metric across these 4, if you will, or across these 3 sides of the triangle, we need a prime metric, planned and tracked, reflecting the 4 variables in integration, and techniques and computations for each variable that can help improve ROI. Scope is really 2 things. It's the product scope, which is the deliverable or deliverables, which will generate almost all of the project's value, and project scope, which is the work we have to do to generate the product scope, and which sometimes adds a little additional value. Cost, which is on one side of this triangle, where project management has traditionally done a good job, okay, particularly with earned value, which is Earned value is a cost metric, not a schedule metric. But we do a pretty good job on that. And it's the investment used to pay for the resources to do the project. Project duration is the time it takes to generate the scope. Usually, 99% of the time, delay reduces the expected value and ROI of the project, and acceleration increases it. Not 100% of the time, but darn close. Now, this will be explored, the project duration stuff, in session 2, January 18th. Hope I see you there. Now, cost is measured in dollars, the dollars for the resources. Some places, if it's only doing human labor, only labor, then it's often measured in resource costs and in labor dollar, in labor hours. If you've got a project that's only measured in labor hours, a good idea is to come up with a standard cost for a labor hour so you can make these comparisons. Scope to create scope that is expected to generate greater value in its cost, and that value is modified by time and project duration. All three sides of the triple constraint should be integrated into a single metric. Yet project management software doesn't do this. It needs to support users in this information by providing, for the most part, new user inputs and also some new metrics. If a project is an investment, then we're working for the difference between the expected value of the project and its cost, which is its ROI. And so we need user input fields. Number one, what is the expected estimated value of the project's planned scope if it's completed on a specific target date? Because if we change that target date, that can change the value. Two, which subdeliverables are mandatory and which are optional? And three, what is the value added of each optional subdeliverable? The two of those together are our value breakdown structure. And then we have something called the DIP, which is based on my very first article on project management, published in Project Management Journal back in 1992. Okay, it's the expected monetary value of the scope if completed on a target date. And we have the planned simple DIP. There's also a complex DIP, which includes things like opportunity costs, project termination costs, and so on. If you're interested, look it up on Wikipedia. But planned simple DIP is the expected monetary value of scope divided by the planned cost estimate to complete. What is the planned cost estimate to complete? It is the complement of the BCWP, budgeted cost of work performed, or as the PMBOK guide insists on calling it, planned value. It's not planned value, it's planned cost. If you don't know the difference between between value and cost, you're invited to a poker game at my house. Okay, standing invitation. All right, so the planned cost estimate to complete, that's there anyway if you're doing earned value. Okay, because it's simply the complement of how the cost is expected to accrue. Now, here is the baseline of the DIP. As you can see on this project, which has an EMV of $240,000 and a cost of, what is it, 80-something thousand. It has a starting DIP where the star is 2.65. As the project is expected to go forward, we expect the cost estimate to complete to go down, right? As work gets accomplished. So if the cost estimate to complete, which is the denominator of the DIP, the number on the bottom, then ultimately, the DIP will rise as the project goes forward. As this project gets closer and closer to finishing, it becomes a more and more valuable investment. That is not an illusion, that's a fact. As you get closer and closer to getting the value out of an investment, that investment becomes more and more valuable on any investment. So as we can see here, when we get to week 18, the starting dip was 2.65, but at week 18, if we're on budget and on schedule, the dip will be up to 6.03. In other words, we'll get $6.03 for every dollar we have to spend to finish the project from that point on. That's what we expect it to be. What could make the actual dip as we're doing the project at any point lower? It'll be lower if we cut scope, if we have a greater cost estimate to complete than expected, or if we're running late. In other words, if any one of the three sides of the triangle changes, or if risk changes, then we would expect our dip to be lower because the dip is integrating all three sides. What could make the actual dip at any point higher? Well, what a horrible idea. Imagine our team wants to make our dip higher, make our project more valuable. Well, if they add good, valuable scope, if we have a lower cost estimate to complete, or if we're early, and by using something like critical path drag, which we'll get to in the next section, we can make the project early. Wouldn't it be a horrible thing if our team decided to work more hours, even come in weekends, in order to finish our project earlier and make us an extra $1 million? If they do that, let's make sure they get some kind of bonus, okay, at the end of the project to make up for them. So they'll do the same thing on the next project. Now, metrics and techniques are needed. And here they all are, okay? So these are some of the metrics. If there are project management software folks out here watching this, this is the stuff we need. The expected monetary value of the scope, we need a value breakdown structure, and we need to get to something called net value added, which we'll talk about next time. Time, we'll talk about this next time. What is the cost of acceleration or delay? That should be an input field right at the start of the project. And critical path drag and drag costs, which the project software algorithms should be calculating. And then true cost we'll get to. Ultimately, this integrated project investment metrics, the DIP, and as we're doing the project, the DPI, the DIP Progress Index, is what we should be managing our project to. Okay, and I hope some of you will come back for session 2. Weight is a heavy load. And if you thought this, if you enjoyed this, if you learned something that you're going to be able to use, please not only come back, but tell your friends. I'm assuming that we're going to have this presentation on the internet somewhere. I'll publish on LinkedIn when we get it up somewhere, and maybe you can come in, invite your friends to come and see the second half. But please, they need to have seen this first part first. Okay, here are some of my publications. Here are my books, and my publisher CRC Press said that I could give you these coupons. Notice there's a number in the middle of them in red. If you enter that number and you're ordering the book, you'll get a 20% discount. And that's me with the mountain, the Piton of St. Lucia, where my father was born. I was born in Barbados. I'm a very proud Bajan, but my father was a very proud St. Lucian, so that's okay. And I'm here for any questions now that you may have.
Thank you very much, Steve. This is fantastic. Projects are indeed investment, and you've done a fantastic job conveying this message here. So the floor is open for questions. Please use the virtual raise hand button, reactions at the bottom of your screen, and please. I see Mark is here, Mark O'Brien. I thank you for joining us, and it was such a pleasure to see you. Would you like to share anything with us? I saw you posted something in the chat. Please feel free to speak.
Mark?
I believe you're on mute, or perhaps audio problem.
No?
He's connecting
Okay.
to
Okay.
audio.
Shall we take someone else in the meantime?
Yes. Anyone?
Kevin
Tom?
Nolan.
Kevin's raised his hand. Kevin Nolan.
Yes, I just wanted to ask you, are there any case studies you could recommend that kind of walks you through this, you know, so that kind of get a real world feel for it?
Okay, case studies for I've worked with tons and tons of customers, okay, but the best case study, the one that I'm going to recommend, is a chapter that I did a few years ago for a book called Handbook of Emergency Response. And it's a chapter that's out there that dealing with response to an earthquake in the Bay Area, and it shows exactly how to arrange a work breakdown, a value breakdown structure in terms of saving lives, and then how to schedule it and optimize it, because the longer that people are under the rubble, the more people are dying. So you want to optimize the schedule and use critical path drag and drag cost in order to do that. However, Kevin, just to let you know, if you follow me online or go into my profile on LinkedIn, there is an article that I published back the first week of the shutdown, of the COVID shutdown, saying, I hope that people out there who are trying to get us back up and responding to this COVID are using these techniques. And it includes a large portion of one of the chapters of my book, Managing Projects as Investments, which again teaches the same process, how to go about planning out the value of projects in this manner and putting together a plan that, again, that saves lives, because the example I chose was one of people being vaccinated in a situation where people were dying.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
If you send me, if anyone has questions and wants to follow me on LinkedIn, send me a question. I'm happy to respond there also. This is my life. I love this stuff.
Mark, were you able to fix your audio? No. It's Luke. No, we can't hear you, unfortunately.
Okay, let me answer. Mark sent me his question on an email, so let me very quickly answer that. His question was, how do you treat projects and optimize a portfolio as an investment if you're not using resource costs? You're just using basically resource hours, labor hours. And a lot of places do that, usually on smaller projects, but they do it and it's fine. Ultimately, my answer is the more data you have with regard to any investment decision, the better off you usually are. And the better that data is, the more precise, the more correct, the better off you are. Ultimately, if someone is not using cost for a budget, but is simply using labor hours, a good technique is to nevertheless estimate how much one of these labor hours is. Have a company standard or even a location standard. So at this factory, a labor hour is worth X amount, whatever you will. And ultimately to use that and develop the budget off of that. And of course, it's useful if that is not just their labor in terms of salary, but is a burdened salary cost, which includes things like rent, electricity, and so on. Okay.
Fantastic. Well, VJ, I see your hands up.
You're on mute, Vijay.
Yes. Hi, Steve. Excellent talk. Thank you very much. Sorry, I'm kind of outside right now, but I wanted to touch on the difference that you portrayed between program management and project management. I was very struck by that, using the movie production example. And I've been head of products of software companies and have managed people who essentially are responsible for both projects and programs. And that was probably the most lucid explanation I've ever heard. So one question for you is, as a program manager, what kind of tools might you use? And are they similar to what project managers use, for example, critical path and critical path drag and so on, in order to manage programs efficiently and to their just and proper conclusion? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Vijay. Quick answer. First of all, anytime you start asking about projects and programs, you really are asking a question that is very poorly understood. People use the two terms interchangeably, and they really aren't. A program we can think of as being a bunch of projects and sometimes non-project work, which is designed to give certain benefits, to follow a certain vision. So the vision statement of a program is often very important. And ultimately, getting compromise among the stakeholders on a program is extremely important and often very difficult to do. The value breakdown structure is absolutely perfect for that, to get these people together and have them figure out what are the value adds, which of these things is mandatory, which is optional, and how can we increase the value of those that are optional and of the program. Also, the program the program manager is responsible for providing the metrics and the goals for the projects. So here they decide what projects are going to be done. They provide a budget for it, and they say, if you get this done by X date, then this project will be contributing, $3 million to our program. And if you finish later than that, for every week that you are later, that'll go down by 5%. Every week earlier, it'll go up by 2% or what have you. And finally, a program also has a critical path, but sometimes it has several critical paths, in that you can think of a program as having different paths to the point at which each bundle of value is delivered. Maybe when we often refer in a program to a tranche of projects, which is like an investment tranche of, we're going to do these 4 projects together, and when they get done, we're going to generate this actual value. If we can make that value generation occur a month earlier, all the greater value. I hope that answers your question.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, all. Now,
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, Steve. Yeah.
I unfortunately I couldn't fix Mark's audio, but I posted in the chat a link to his website, projectlead.com, which is open source project management software. Hopefully, Mark will be able to join us to talk a bit about it when Steve will be here in January. We are at the top of the hour, so if folks want to continue to have this conversation, that's fantastic. But in respect of everyone's time, I have to stop it here. Thank you all for attending. At the end of the year, so many folks are here, so it's fantastic to see you. I look forward to seeing you next month, same time, the third Thursday of the month at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
I hope to see you all again. And please, again, feel free to link with me on LinkedIn.
Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you so much.